Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last checked in for a recent reads video. I read 4 books over this past week, which I think is technically the lowest number I've had in one of these recent reads videos, but it was still like a decent reading week, and like you'll see kind of when we get to my currently reading section why I didn't finish more things. So let's just jump straight in and talk about the things that I did complete over this past week. So the first book that I finished was Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book, of course, in the Throne of Glass series. I obviously can't talk too much about what this is about because we're real deep in the series at this point. I really enjoyed this one. This one has a lot going on, and I thought the pacing of this, because this is a chunky book, this one is almost 700 pages, but it didn't feel slow at any point. There's always something going on. There's lots of different action parts. It's not like the whole book is building to like kind of one confrontation. There's lots of like parts of like different confrontations and conflicts going on, and then even the parts kind of in between those still felt like interesting and kept me engaged. I really love all of the characters. I just overall really enjoyed this. This is definitely my favorite of the series so far, and I gave this 4.5 stars. Really looking forward to continuing on and finishing this series. So that was the first book that I finished. I then read I Know You're There by Sarah Simpson. This is one of my NetGalley reads, so I did receive a digital copy of this in exchange for an honest review. This is a thriller, and this one is basically, so this synopsis sets it up as that it's this woman who has moved into this like flat, this like group of flats. So there's basically like 4 flats in this little like complex, and it's kind of about that, you know, she becomes quite friendly with the 3 other like tenants, but then some like sinister things start to happen, and it's kind of like, how well do you know these people? So that's kind of what the synopsis set it up as. But so I thought it was going to be this woman moving in, like having just kind of arrived there, but it's not. She's an established tenant, like she's been there for a while, she's known these people for a while, and it's also not even like she's kind of the main character, but you do also get the perspectives right from the off of 2 of the other tenants as well, so it's not really just like purely like about what's going on with her. And there was some kind of sinister things going on, which was like a little bit interesting. I had a inkling from the beginning what I thought was going on, and I was proved to be correct. I should also say that the way that this is written did put me like off balance. Like I was off balance kind of from the get-go, going, what exactly is going on here? Because everyone kind of has their own like secrets and things like that, but I still kind of thought I knew what was going on. So it was kind of confusing the way that it was told, but I still kind of thought I knew what was going on. And then we got to the end and I was right. And I also had a real problem with that thing. Even though I could see it coming, I didn't appreciate it. I think it was a real villainizing of people with mental illnesses, which can be a real problem in thrillers, and I think it was particularly like prevalent in this, like the real villainizing of people with mental illnesses, on top of like the mental illness itself is like not well depicted. Like, and I say this as someone who doesn't suffer from the mental illness, and I'm not going to get into what it is because it would like technically be spoilers, but I even did a bit of research afterwards about this mental illness because I was pretty sure that like the way it was depicted in this book and the way it was kind of like shown was like not fair and accurate, and that proved to be correct from my research into it. So overall, this was a big miss for me, and I ended up giving that one 2 stars. I then read Close to the Brokenhearted by Michael Hybert. So this is the 2nd book in the Detective Leah Teal series. So I read the 1st book. So I actually have the 3rd book in this series from NetGalley that I've had out from NetGalley for ages, and when I finally went to read it, I realized it was the 3rd in a series, but my library had the first 2, and so I've been reading the first 2 from my library so that I like have the background of the series to go into the 3rd one, even though it's kind of a detective series, so each of them like mysteries themselves are kind of standalone. The kind of difference with this series is that, yes, it follows the detective, and you do get her perspective, but you also get a lot of the perspective from her son, who I think in the first book might have been 11, and in this one he's 12. And so you get it from his perspective, and it's set in like a small town in Alabama. So I really enjoyed the first one. I gave the first one 4 stars. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much. I just didn't find the mystery like of this one as engaging. But I was still like okay with it. Then I finished it and I read a bunch of reviews, and a lot of people were complaining about the way that the language, and like the way that the characters speak, because it's set in like the South, was not well depicted. And then I realized that this author is in fact Canadian. So he's not from the South or from Alabama. I didn't particularly notice because one of the things that they were saying was it was very up and down. On one point, like the main like detective would have like good English and then would just fall into this like Alabama, you know, type of South like slang kind of, I guess you would call it. But it didn't particularly bother me because I didn't notice it. Like, it's only when I read the reviews, but I thought I would mention it. So I was sitting on kind of like a 3.5 star, but I have decided to decrease it down to a 3.25. And that is because I discovered in reading a bunch of reviews for this book on Goodreads that this author is someone who responds to negative reviews. I just don't agree with responding to reviews. I am someone who believes that reviews are for readers. They're not for the author. And he's not responding in a way that he's being like, you're wrong or anything like that. He was engaging in a polite, courteous manner. And in some ways it was just commenting on, some of it was about the like vernacular and him like commenting on that and saying how he'd noticed it had been brought up a lot and, you know, that they were looking at it and he was dealing with it kind of with his publisher. But then I like didn't like it. Someone was like, it was one review in particular where like the person like straight up hated the book, and then he like offered to like give them an arc of like the next book, and I was like, and I had a look and I couldn't see any offers of giving arcs to someone who'd provided a positive review, and I was like, so I don't know, I just had a real problem with that, and I just don't really love authors who respond to reviews. So I probably shouldn't decrease the rating for the book because of that, but it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, so I ended up bringing this book down to a 3.25 star. It is what it is. So then the last book that I completed was Clear My Name by Paula Daly. This is another book that I received a digital copy in exchange for an honest review from NetGalley. This is another thriller. So this one is about a woman who murdered her husband's like mistress, a woman that he was having an affair with. She was convicted of that murder, but it's about her she's always proclaimed her innocence, and then it follows like the Innocence Project in like the UK, so like a foundation or organization of people who look into crimes of people who've possibly been wrongly convicted and look into the crimes and try to get their convictions overturned. And so we're following that story, and so you do get like alternate time periods of looking at the current day of so we follow the main like person from the Innocence Project, Tess, and we follow her, but then we also follow the time period like prior to the crime, kind of leading up to the crime, of discovering what exactly did happen. This was very quick. I think this was only like 300 pages, super quick, super easy to read, just like a really fun, easy to fly through thriller. I had in my head from the very beginning what I thought the twist was going to be, and I was wrong. Which is kind of a good thing because I don't like to be right, but I personally think that my twist would have been better than the twist that was in there. And I don't know why I thought that the twist that I thought, because I don't mean this in a stuck up way, it's not necessarily a twist that I think a lot of people would have thought. So I think would have been a shocking twist, but then it's like, well, why do I think that? Because I did think of that, like that's what I thought was going to happen. So maybe it's a good thing that it wasn't that, because maybe a lot of people did think that, but I don't think that they would have. I don't know. It was kind of a strange reading experience with that. Like I got to the end and I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't that. But then I was like, oh, but like my ending that I had in my head, I feel like would have been a more like fun surprise, even though I would have guessed that. So I say that, but then I probably would have been annoyed because I would have been like, oh, it was that the whole time. So I don't know, I did enjoy it. It was an enjoyable, fun, easy to read thriller. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. So that's it. Those are the 4 books that I've read. To touch on what I'm currently reading. So you may have noticed that I didn't have any audiobooks in there. So I didn't finish any audiobooks over the past week. And that is because the audiobook that I'm currently listening to, and I'm still technically listening to, is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. The audiobook for this is like 35 hours long. And as you will have noticed if you've been watching my recent reads videos, I'm not getting through as much audiobook listening lately as I used to. And so I just didn't make it through the whole book. I'm 54% of the way through, so I'm just over halfway. And unfortunately, the audiobook expired. So I've made it 54% of the way through and I've had to place it back on hold. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get to finish it. I think there's only like one person in front of me, so I'm hoping that I do get it really soon. So this is the first book in the Live Ship Trader trilogy. But all of Robin Hobb's trilogies kind of fall into the same world, which the overall like thing is called the Realm of the Elderlings, I think. But each like trilogy can be read as like a standalone trilogy. And so I had previously read her, what was that? The Farseer trilogy, and like enjoyed it. And I will say that I'm only 54% of the way through so far, but so far I am enjoying this trilogy more than I enjoyed her previous trilogy. So this one is set in a fantasy world where there are, which is kind of connected to the previous fantasy world, but in this one we're following ships, but they're like ships that are like magical ships that there's this whole like history and stuff around the ships that if they have 3 people from the same family line who like own the ship all die on board the ship, then the ship quickens, which basically means it like comes to life. And we're following, the main story follows a girl named Althea who has grown up on this ship, and her father has like at the start of the story is like about to die, and he is the third like one from their family line is going to die, and the ship is going to quicken, and she feels a real bond with the ship, loves sailing, loves the ship. It's like all her whole life is about this ship. Comes to discover, like the start of the story, this is all in the synopsis, that her father has made her older sister's husband heir to the ship, not her. And it's like a whole thing, and like that's kind of what it's about. I just find that storyline, even though I really loved all of the political intrigue in the Farseer trilogy, and this one doesn't really have that, or not so far, I've just really been enjoying it. That whole thing about the ships and it being alive and all of that, I've just found really interesting. And there's a lot going on kind of with all of that. And so far, I'm really enjoying it, and I look forward to finishing it whenever I can get my hands on a copy. So that's the audiobook that I'm still in the middle of. And then I am also reading Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. So this is the 6th book in the Throne of Glass series. I am currently on page 287, so I'm kind of just under halfway. I don't want to give you too much of my thoughts on this yet because I'll have my thoughts for this in my recent reads video next week, because I will finish this hopefully this weekend, because I've got just under 400 pages left in this, because this is like 660 pages. So I've got like 380 pages left of this, which I should definitely be able to read over this weekend and then have my thoughts on this, because this is kind of an interesting how this has ended up being like what it is in the series, which I'll get into more in my recent reads video next week. So those are the books that I've read and what I am currently reading. So like I said, even though I only finished 4 books, I'm in the middle of 2 really long books. Like I said, the audiobook for Ship of Magic is like 35 hours. I think the physical copy is like 800 and something pages. So even though I didn't finish either of those, like in terms of actual like page numbers read, I still read a lot this week. Like I still finished 4 books and got like halfway through like 2 other massive books. So I'm really happy with everything that I managed to read over this past week. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I have been reading, or if you want to chat about what you have been reading recently. I would love to chat in the comments down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.